Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and over the past 2 years, we've seen a dramatic increase in wealth inequality here in Canada, with the wealthy getting wealthier and the poor getting even poorer. Now, in part, this is a result of the actions of the Bank of Canada. Previously, they denied this, but now they're starting to admit it. But a parallel system powered by crypto has given people freedom from this central bank tinkering, allowing everyone to play by the same rules instead of a different set of rules for the wealthy and for the poor. Recently, the Bank of Canada has made some statements that they'll be fighting back against this new system by creating their own competitor. So in today's video, we're going to go over exactly what's been said so far, what this crypto competitor is that the Bank of Canada is planning on developing, whether or not this puts assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum at risk, and potentially how you can use this information to benefit you. But before we do, check out the link in the description where you can subscribe to my second channel where I cover all kinds of crypto topics that aren't specifically related to Canadians. On this channel, I'll keep covering Canadian crypto content, but if you want even more, subscribe to it down there. But now we need to talk about the absolutely huge action that the government of Canada has taken since the beginning of the pandemic. Over the past 2 years, the Bank of Canada has added roughly $300 billion new dollars into the Canadian money system, meaning that every dollar you had before is worth significantly less than it was pre-pandemic, while this $300 billion trickles its way into the economy, often into things that wealthy people own, like real estate and stocks. Before, when questioned about this, the Bank of Canada would say that it wasn't true, but as of last week, they've started to admit it. Here's a clip of the governor of the Bank of Canada sort of hinting at this at a conference that was recently held with a bunch of other bankers.
We're also looking at how the monetary policy tools we've deployed, including quantitative easing, are affecting inequality. Other central banks are also focused on understanding the distributional impacts of monetary policy.
Essentially, what he's saying is that they're taking a closer look at how the decisions that they have made have resulted in more benefit for the wealthy and less for the poor. Now, obviously, this raises questions about the few people at the top who are making the decisions that affect the Canadian dollars that we all use. Should the already wealthy be the ones making the decision about when to print money, potentially causing inflation and negative impacts for Canada's poorest? I personally don't think so, and that's where crypto assets start to come into play. Some crypto assets are decentralized, which just means that instead of a few people at the top making the decisions, we can all collectively get together and decide on the rules and make sure and guarantee that nobody is able to break them. For example, with Bitcoin, there's a 21 million Bitcoin cap, which means that once they reach that cap, no one central person can make the decision to print or make any more of it. With programmable crypto assets like Ethereum, we can also make sure that everyone's playing by the same rules when it comes to other things like lending and borrowing money, transacting money, along with a whole bunch of other different functions. And this is all thanks to decentralization, which is a big contrast from the way things work today, where often wealthy people play by different rules, they can get better interest rates and often preferential treatment. But as people actually start to use these decentralized systems, the centralized power that bankers have over the money that we use is greatly reduced. Now, as a result, we'll see bankers often scoffing at the idea of these digital assets, and in the case of the Bank of Canada, even planning on making their own. Now, let me show you a clip that reveals what the governor of the Bank of Canada is currently thinking around their plans to issue their own sort of cryptocurrency to compete with these decentralized networks.
I mean, this is a huge challenge to the classic monetary system. What's your view on the future of crypto?
You know, our economy is becoming more digital, and the pandemic has accelerated that. And so you do have to ask your question. You do have to ask yourself the question, you know, should the central bank give Canadians the ability to have central bank money in a digital format?
What the governor is referring to here is something called a CBDC, or Central Bank Digital Currency. This is what they want to implement and hope that all Canadians use it instead of these other assets that we've been talking about. But the one key thing to note about a CBDC is that it's still centralized. This means that the government could make changes to the rules at any time without anyone else's consent. And I'd argue that it gives them even more power over the lives of everyday Canadians. With a central bank digital currency that's programmable, they could introduce way more controls that you may not even realize. For example, it would be entirely possible for them to program in certain taxes and disincentives that they could apply to you if you weren't spending your money in the way that they wanted you to. Let's say that they wanted to try to stimulate the economy by getting people to spend more money. They'd be able to implement a negative interest rate that would reduce the amount of funds that you actually have, thus incentivizing you to go out and spend it on more goods and services, potentially stimulating the economy. I'm sure you're starting to see why it's so important to have a money system that isn't controlled by just a few people at the top. This is decentralization. But now let's listen into the Bank of Canada to find out how close they actually are to implementing their own CBDC, that is centralized, not decentralized.
We've been doing a lot of work. I would say we've been doing a lot of R&D. First of all, doing research on what are the features that you would want in a digital currency. How could we do that? What are the risks? And now I would say we're moving from the R and R&D to the D, more to the development. Okay, now we've done a lot of research. Let's see, could we actually develop? It's still some ways off, and ultimately whether we have a central bank digital currency in this country is a decision of the Minister of Finance. But we certainly want to be ready if we come to the view, and then the government comes to the view, that it would make sense.
So it sounds like they're currently developing a system like this, but they do note that ultimately it's not the decision of the Bank of Canada on whether or not to implement a CBDC. That would be up to the Minister of Finance, and that's currently Chrystia Freeland. Based on the countless interviews and statements I've watched to make videos on this channel of Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, it seems like this issue isn't even on their radar. But my guess is that they're going to have to start talking about it as this develops over the next few years. And when they do finally start talking about it, I sincerely hope that they allow the decentralized crypto systems to thrive instead of just defaulting to the centralized ones, which would just be new boss, pretty much the same as the old boss. But in the meantime, the Bank of Canada is actively trying to dismiss and downplay the significance of decentralized networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I think that this clip is a pretty good example of that.
Although,
Right now,
people are buying Bitcoin anyway.
yeah, Bitcoin though, let's be clear, Bitcoin is not a digital currency. People do not use Bitcoin to buy things. People use Bitcoin, they're speculating. It's an investment. And I'll let other people give investment advice as to whether it's a good investment. But it is not a currency in the sense that you and I transact in Bitcoin.
Well, people are paying for stuff. They're pay me in Bitcoin. I'll buy your house in Bitcoin.
The amount of stuff that really gets bought and sold in Bitcoin is very small. It's mostly people buying it for speculative purposes. They're buying it because they think the price is going to go up and they're going to make money. They're not buying it to buy their groceries or buy their house or fill up their gas tank.
Some of the points that he's making are fair. Both Bitcoin and Ethereum have challenges when it comes to frequently transacting in a currency format. Many people will say that Bitcoin is actually more a store of value, though some others will point to things like the Lightning Network, which hope to allow people to more regularly transact peer-to-peer with something like Bitcoin. For Ethereum, high transaction fees makes it way too expensive for most users to move around money like this. But this high transaction fee is a direct result of Ethereum's decentralization. Without getting too technical, if Ethereum wanted to reduce these transaction fees, they'd have to sacrifice their decentralization like some other chains do. Now, in my opinion, this completely goes against what the main benefit is of this technology, which is being decentralized. Using a low transaction fee centralized option is essentially like letting Amazon or Google run the entire financial system. It's far more centralized than decentralized, with control at the top rather than spread out amongst all the people. However, there are solutions for Ethereum which are currently functional. There are many layer 2s which allow for very cheap transaction fees while inheriting the decentralization of the Ethereum network. The governor of the Bank of Canada is right though. People aren't widely using crypto to buy things like gas and groceries, but they are buying it as a store of value that isn't liable to be devalued anytime the Bank of Canada executives decide, hey, now's a good time to print some more money. Now, this isn't financial advice, but I'm personally investing in digital assets which are as decentralized as possible. Long term, I believe that these neutral systems, which are a little bit more difficult to change, are going to be the places that people build their companies in the future. Think about it this way. If you were going to put your life's work into a project, would you rather build that project in a situation where the rules could change at any given moment, or would you want to build that on solid ground? All in all, there are lots of interesting things happening, and I want to know what you think about it, so leave me a comment down there and subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video in particular, there's a good chance you're going to like what I'm putting out on my second crypto channel, which covers a lot more that's not just Canada related when it comes to crypto. So I'd love to see your support over there on that channel. It's the first link in the description. But with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.